Well, hello everyone. I'm Dan Turbyville, and this is Powerhouse Fence Show. Today, I'm going to start a journey of what I believe is my opinion of a step-by-step guide for getting into the whole general contractor commercial fence world. So, if you're looking for step-by-step instructions, this is going to be kind of that. Um, yeah, Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. It might take a couple episodes to get through. I don't know. I made show notes and they're pretty long, so we'll see how it goes. As always, this show is presented by Memphis Fence Company, Simpalo, and I'm still not going to tell you the new thing. Not just yet. I need to change all the stuff. And anyway, we have a few partners here on this show. The Thornton Fence Consulting Group is our oldest and longest standing partner we have on the show. We appreciate that. So if you're looking for a consultant, if you're looking to attend some events, then definitely check out their website. Fence News, great fence industry publication that you should check out if you want to stay up to date on all the latest news and trends. EZG Manufacturing, they make the big orange equipment. We see at trade shows all the time, the fence hog, barbed wire hog, stuff like that. They make good stuff. We like it. We use it. And so their logo is on here too. I am live. Phone number is scrolling on the bottom of the screen. Should you choose to call 901 878 4987. You can call me now or you can call me anytime. That phone number always works. Oh man, we used to talk about what we were listening to, and I haven't done it a ton. Do it every now and then. I've been listening to Henry Ford's autobiography that was written in 1922. And to be honest with you, I don't remember the name, so I'm just going to talk a second while I look it up. It's called My Life and Work. Very interesting. I've only made it like through the first chapter, and it was a lot about society and stuff like that. And it was interesting how a lot of what he said over 100 years ago still applies to today. So, like I said, interesting. That's the new book I've been working on. So, there you go. I appreciate everybody being here, listening, tuning in. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's the reason I do this every week. I sit here and talk to some cameras, and hopefully it benefits somebody out there. If you have any questions, if you want me to talk about something, feel free to reach out some way or another. Like I said, phone number scrolling on the bottom of the screen. You can look me up. All of those sponsors are me. So you can look me up on any of those and you can find me. But I do appreciate you being here. So I was not here last week because I was in New York at teaching operations management school for AFA. I think the class went really well. We had a lot of positive feedback. We had some constructive criticism that went along with that, which is great because we revamped the class, and this was the first time we had taught it after the book was done and all the presentations were done and everything else. We learned a lot, and we're going to continue to improve that here over the next few months. That class will be taught again at AFAU in Texas in November, I think. I'll be there for that as well. So you should check it out. It's good stuff. I actually took the test. I haven't gotten my test results back, but hopefully I passed. So I'll let you know if I didn't. So with that, let's get into the show. Let's talk about some steps that you're going to have to, or that you should go through if you're going to get into bidding and performing work for general contractors. Step number one, prepare yourself and your business. Okay. I would do a lot of research. I've done a lot of episodes on this show. I think this is episode number 95. A lot of those are talking about bidding work to general contractors. That's kind of the point of this show. And so there's a ton of information. You can read the subject of the episodes in the description, and I try to put what they actually are about. If you don't know, this show actually is on basically all the major podcast platforms as well. And so you don't have to watch on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn or wherever you're watching right now, you can go listen to the podcast as well. Just Powerhouse Fence Show. I think it's on like a dozen different podcast platforms. So probably the one you listen to has it on there. But same thing. Look at the name of the episodes, look at the descriptions, and find one that talks about whatever you're struggling with, right? Or something that you don't know about. You can go back and listen to them. I try to make it to where the content in them is not going to expire. I think people call that evergreen, right? And it's there for you. All right. It's a resource that you can go and you can listen and you can genuinely maybe learn some things from listening to it, but you got to put in the time to do it. And you have to bear listening to me long enough to put in that time. So if that doesn't work for you, go find some people you can talk to. The fence Facebook groups are very active. There's a lot of people that post on there. There's some people who maybe you shouldn't take advice from. I don't know anyone specifically, so I'm not talking about any particular person, but just be careful who you take advice from and who you talk to about it. Make sure they're actually doing the thing that you ask them about. So, and I would talk to multiple people, right? And so if you called me and we had a conversation and you said, "Hey, I have these 4 questions." Well, that conversation is probably not going to be just strictly about those 4 questions, right? We're probably going to get off on some tangents here and there, and you're probably going to pick up things that you're not asking for. I would have that conversation with multiple people and just pick their brains. And anytime you get in a bind and you're like, man, I really don't know what to do here, same thing. You can call some people and ask them. But however you do it, study. Study what it takes to do the job and to be successful at it because you don't want to get in a situation that costs you thousands of dollars because you were too prideful. Your ego wouldn't allow you to ask questions, right? Or you're just too lazy to go do the research and find the information. Put in the work on the front end to prepare yourself and understand what you're getting into. So, kind of a contrast to that, failure is a part of it. I know we think of failure as being this terrible thing that nobody ever wants to experience, but it's a part of life. We mess stuff up and we fail at doing things. But what we do after is what's important, right? Immediately we make it right. And then from there we learn. And now we know, oh, I don't want to do that again. Right. So we learned a lesson while we failed, and that's what's important. So when you do screw something up, learn from it and think back, what should I have done? What could I have done different? Same thing applies. If you need to call people and talk to them about it, just do it. It sucks. It sucks to call somebody and be like, "Hey, man, I really screwed this up, but let me tell you the story and you tell me where it started going sideways." All right. Still in step one, we're preparing ourselves, we're preparing our business. Let's talk about contractor licenses for a minute. So, first step, I would say in that path is to figure out where you want to do business. Maybe you just want to work in your own town, right? Maybe there's 2 or 3 towns inside your state you want to work. You want to work across your whole state. You want to work in 3 states. You want to work in 50 states, whatever that is. Determine where you're going to start and then do the research and figure out what the license requirements are. That varies all over the place depending on what state it is. Normally, if there are contractors licenses in the state, there's a maximum job size you can do without them. And so if you're going to work under that monetary limit, you don't have to worry about it. But if you're going to cross that, then you might want to start working on it. It's not really a thing that you can get overnight. It does take several steps to get a contractor license. So I would say probably, start working on that and kind of as you're getting all this stuff ramped up, don't forget that piece. Uh, but yeah, like I said, it varies a lot. Some states don't even require it. Some states you got to get a license from like different jurisdictions that are, around major cities. Like it's weird. Do the research on your state, figure out where you're going to work. But what I can tell you is that you don't want to be the low bidder on a job and a general contractor call you and ask you for your license number and you go, well, about that. You don't want to be in that spot. I promise you, because I've been in that spot and it's an awkward conversation. So yeah, there's that. Insurance is another thing. We've done episodes in the past specifically about insurance, and you're going to need a handful of different insurance coverages, general liability, workers' comp, auto. You'll need an umbrella. I would say find an insurance agent that's familiar with your area, works with contractors, knows what's required, and go that path. I don't like having an insurance agent that you have to pick up the phone and call and they say, "Well, what's your customer ID number?" And you can't get the same person ever. And, like those, I don't even know an example, right? But the online insurance kind of stuff. Same thing with the bank. I don't like that. I like to have an actual insurance agent. I like to have an actual banker. And you need people like that in your life. Whether you need them today or not, that's okay. But I promise you, at some point, having a relationship with an insurance agent, with a banker is gonna pay off. I I call my insurance agent with crazy stuff all the time. I'm that kind of guy where it's like, oh, it's been 4 days. Here's some new crazy stuff that I thought about trying to do. Right. I have those conversations a lot and they know to expect that from me, right? But we also send them our like, well, if we're bidding a job and it has some weird insurance requirements in it, we send it to them and we say, hey, how much will this coverage cost? If we get a contract, we send them every contract we get from general contractors and ask them to review the insurance requirements in there, and they will go to bat for us if it's some crazy stuff in there that does not apply and doesn't make sense. Because these contracts, they send the same or a very similar contract to everyone. And so, I mean, there might be some pollution control stuff in there and, insurance for doing design work and different things like that that really don't apply to us because we're not doing anything that even has a risk for those. So they'll go to bat for us. They'll help us to say, hey, Memphis Fence does not need this insurance coverage. And let me tell you why. And most of the times that stuff can get removed. Hey, you really want to look at that insurance requirement deal when you're bidding the job. You don't want to look at it when you get a contract and then have a big dispute and all of that because what happens, the contractor is going to say, it was included in the bid documents. Why didn't you look at it then? And you don't have a good answer. Right? I mean, we come up with excuses and we're like, "Oh, well, I was just too busy. Didn't have time. My shoes were tied together and I couldn't get there." Whatever it is, like we just come up with excuses, but ultimately, we don't really have a reason. We just didn't do it. We forgot about it. The safety program. So, at some point when you're bidding work to general contractors or doing work for general contractors, you're going to have a written safety plan. So go ahead in your free time, because I know we all have a ton of free time. Just start working on it. Use ChatGPT or some version of AI to help you make it. Uh, don't just tell it to make it and then print it and shove it in a file somewhere. Actually, look at it and make sure it makes sense. Same thing. We don't care about pollution stuff, really, right? I mean, not that we don't care. I don't mean it like that, but it doesn't really apply to what we're doing very much. So just make sure that the thing makes sense, right? Because it should be passed out to new hires, and it should be something that you pay attention to and you take at least somewhat seriously. Is safety in general. We talk a lot about how it's hard to find people to come to work. It's hard to find the right people, good people, whatever it is. Well, don't ignore safety because we need to take care of the people that we do have that do show up and do the job. So GCs at some point are going to ask you for a written safety program. It sucks when people ask you for stuff like that and you have to scramble around and try to make it because remember, we don't have any free time. We don't have 3 days to spend preparing this thing or a day or whatever it takes. So I'd go ahead and try to get that done on the front end. Sometimes you're going to have to turn this in when you pre-qualify with a contractor. You might have to give it to them after you sell a job. You might just send it to them if you're like, hey, I want to bid work to you. Here's my safety program. Here's my capability statement. Here's my insurance coverage. Like you might just want to submit all of that on the front end. Another thing in the safety world, I would say, is OSHA training. You're going to run into this. So go ahead, take a few of your lead installers and send them to an OSHA 30. Okay, that can be an in-person, it can be online. You can do it in the winter, right? When they can't go out and install fence, like that, all of that kind of stuff can be done. We're getting there now. So this is a good time to talk about this. But I would not waste my time with OSHA 10s. Some jobs only require an OSHA 10 still, but OSHA 30 is way more common than OSHA 10 these days. So I just go ahead and go straight to the 30. Again, you can do it online, but it is, I mean, don't just be super dismissive of it, right? There's a lot of stuff in there that's like, oh, but safety is a thing. Drug testing is another thing that you're going to run into. A lot of jobs, a lot of contractors, a lot of owners will require that you be drug tested. Hold on. So, my opinion of this is just go ahead and start doing it. And I don't necessarily mean like load up the whole crew on a bus and drive an hour away and have everybody stand in line and all of that stuff. Write a drug test policy. Tell everybody, like have a company wide meeting, say, hey, here's our new drug test policy. This is what we're going to do. Here's your heads up. And then you can buy those at home tests and you can just start testing people at work. I would make it a part of the interview process. Tell them when you interview them, is what I mean. And then part of your new hire orientation type of phase, include that drug test in there. We just had somebody this week, I think, who we intended to hire, and we said, here, go pee in this cup. And they failed the drug test and we didn't hire them. So if you get into a situation where a contractor is going to require a drug test, most of the time it's going to have to be like a legit lab drug test. Okay. But what you're doing by the at home thing is you're not going to get to where you have that job and you have to go be drug tested next week to get on the job site. And now it's a surprise for everybody. You're just setting a precedence that, hey, we're going to do drug tests. We're getting more serious into this general contractor commercial world. Drug tests are a part of it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start talking about it and we're going to start doing it. If you are hiring someone new and they failed the at-home drug test and they dispute it, you can go take them to a lab and have a lab test done. And, that way there's no argument. I always kind of try to protect myself from lawsuits because those happen, right? And I don't want to get sued by someone because they failed what they claim to be fake drug test. I like to, if there is any kind of dispute or anything else, I just get the lab test done. And it's going to take a few days, but we have a relationship with the local medical provider who will do those tests for us. It's pretty quick. It does cost $75 or something like that a person to do it. So when we need it, we do it. And again, on those jobs for DOT requirements, like that's a different type of test. That's not going to be an at-home test that you can do. When you go to a general contractor and they want you drug tested, they're going to tell you where to go. And they're going to tell you what type of test to take and all of that stuff. And those test results, they have a whole chain of custody that goes with them and all of this stuff. So they're a lot more secure, I guess we could say. But anyway, just let them know and start working on it. PPE is another thing. When you get into working with GCs, you're going to have PPE. You're going to have hard hats and steel toe boots and safety glasses and the vest. Depending on what job it is, they're going to tell you what type of vest and what type of hard hat and what type of glasses and all of this. They will give you requirements. Some of them will tell you what type of pocket knife you're allowed to take on the job site and what type of ladder you're allowed to use. And some of them won't allow you to climb onto a trailer from the ground. You have to put steps from the ground up to the trailer. Even if it's a little equipment trailer that's only 2 foot in the air, you're going to have steps. It's got to have a grab rail on it. Like there's a lot of stuff out there. All of that normally comes with the bigger general contractors. Maybe sometimes the large owners. So if it's big corporate America owner, they might have their own safety requirements. But most of what I see is when we work with bigger general contractors, that's when the safety stuff really gets in there. We've done a job before where we had to work on a bridge, and it was a crazy thing because the guy that bid it, I don't think really understood what we were getting into. He didn't spend enough time to actually understand the job and the schedule of the job and everything else that was going to be required. And come to find out, we had to work on weekends. So it was over an interstate. They shut the interstate down. We worked through the weekends, 24 hours. And so we had to do that, right? And then we also had to have all of this fall protection. We had to have a very specific type of harness. The harness had to have a certain type of yo-yo hanging on your back. You had to be, I think they call it like 100% tie off, maybe. So you have to have two hooks that you can hook into something, and you always have one connected somewhere. You can never disconnect them. Uh, and so I think we wound up, all the tools had to be tied off. So if you had your fence pliers, they had to be tied off to you. If you had on your hard hat, it had to be tied off to you. Every single thing was tied off because there was also people working on the ground below, and you can't drop a pair of fence pliers 30 feet and let them land on someone. And I think we spent like 10 or $12,000 on all this fall protection stuff that should have been bid into the job, and it was not. So think about that kind of stuff as you're getting into it, and just be aware it's a thing that exists. You could go ahead and start buying some stuff. Most of the side impact hard hats are a lot more common now as a requirement. Shop around and find a decent deal because some of them are ignorantly expensive. Some of them might be like 200 bucks a piece, but shop around. I think we use Milwaukee. The side impact hard hats I think we have are from Milwaukee, and I want to say they were like 65 or 70 bucks a piece. They are a lot more than a normal hard hat, but if you're going to spend the money, to me, if you're going to spend 25 or $30 a piece on a normal hard hat, or you could spend 65 on the side protection and then you're covered, the side protection might be the way to go. They're not as comfortable. They are hotter, so there's that trade-off. But you can go ahead and start kind of investing in stuff a little bit here and there. It wouldn't hurt to have it anyways, right? We had a guy, it's been a few years ago, but we had some guys that were making a hookup on a terminal post, so connecting the fence, whatever y'all call that. And a guy up top had some brace bands that he was putting on, and he dropped one of them and it hit a dude right in the head. And there was a workers' comp claim because the guy got hit in the head with a brace band and it cut his head open and stuff like that. So, had he had on a hard hat, that definitely would have protected him from there. A lot of times we think about those and we're like, man, what kind of sense does that make? Y'all are building a building that's 500 feet away from us. We're out here all on our own building a fence. Well, there's an example. But anyway, yeah, you can set aside a little money here and there because it's going to come. You can go ahead and start investing in some stuff, whatever you want to do. Financial foundation. So I talk about this all the time. I know. Understand your overhead. You have to understand your overhead to know what margins you need to use when you're bidding a job. Again, I know I'm beating a dead horse, but you got to have that. And I hope you do. Right. I hope you have at least some basic financials going on enough to where you can pull up reports. You can see your revenue, your cost of goods sold, your overhead, your profit, net income, and you can see at least those basics. But that's where you start. And that's how you know what margin you have to go to. If someone asks you for a 5% discount, can you give it to them? You don't know unless you know your numbers, unless you know what that margin has to be for you to make at least a little bit of money. But yeah, start working on those basic financials. If you don't have it, just do it. Just do it. All right. The vast majority of people in history who have ever accomplished something great did it because they planned and they prepared. It's normally not something that just happens overnight. There is years worth of work that leads into it. I was listening to the Founders podcast episode about James Dyson. I think I included a story about him in one of our episodes here. It's been a while ago, but if I'm not mistaken, he made something like 1,500 or 2,500 prototype vacuums before he ever made one that he thought was good enough to sell. All right. And now you see Dyson all over the place, and there's crazy expensive vacuums and air purifiers and all this stuff, right? But, and I would assume that he's done pretty well for himself. But all of that work, even if it is 1,500, I think it was 2,500, but made 1,500 prototype vacuums and none of them were good enough and threw them away, right? Thomas Edison, same thing. I mean, we think of Edison and we think, oh, he made a light bulb. Well, yeah. And it took him what 1,000 tries to make one that worked. And he had a full lab that was staffed and had all these, systems and tools and equipment and everything else before there was any major opportunities that ever came to him. So he prepared. And when the big opportunities arrived, he was ready. So that's the same thing we have to do. We have to prepare because we want to be ready when that big opportunity arrives. We don't want it to show up and be like, oh gosh, I heard Dan talking about this crap. And if I would have done it, I would have been ready. Right. We got to be prepared. We got to be ready at any moment. Step two. That was all step one. And we're almost half an hour in. Step two, build your team and your infrastructure. Okay. The obvious part of this is installers. We all know we need skilled, reliable crews that are going to show up to work and they're going to do the job. Because if we start bidding jobs, and let's say your revenue doubled, right? Increased by 30%. If your crews are already working 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, who's going to do that work? So that's just a thing that you got to be prepared for, is making sure that you got the people to do the work, or you have contingency plans, you have backup subcontractors, something like that in place, who are able to show up and do the work. And if you start growing your workforce, you're going to make sure you're going to want to make sure that you maintain whatever culture you need so that people want to come back to work tomorrow and they want to be there for more than 3 weeks. So that's something there's a lot of steps, right? There's a lot of parts, there's a lot of pieces. It's a lot of work. So our vendors and suppliers. I've talked about it, but we have to treat the vendors, the suppliers, all of these folks like they're a part of our team, right? They are. They're a part of our team because we can't do anything if we don't have good vendors. And I don't know how I can express the value of a good vendor. And what I mean specifically by a good vendor is a good sales rep. Okay. Or a good 2 or 3 sales reps, like a good group of people who are going to do what you need to do and they're going to help you out and they're going to make sure that they do what they commit to. That's the biggest thing with all of it, right? Is we have to do what we commit to towards our customer. They have to do what they commit to us. So if you don't, if you have some vendors, you have some suppliers, they're not doing what you need them to do, it's okay to go look for another one. I know your cousin went to school with this guy and you've known him since you were 14 or whatever. That's okay. That's great, right? If you have that sort of relationship with the vendor and they're taking care of you, doing what you need, that is fantastic. If you have that kind of personal relationship with a vendor, but they really don't do what you need, you might want to look for another. My father-in-law likes to use this analogy of a wing walker. And he's like, yeah, imagine, you go to the air show, you see them walking on the wings and all this stuff. He said, watch their hands. They will never let go of one spot until they have a firm grasp on the next. Right. So you obviously need a vendor to buy material from. So I would apply that whole wing walker philosophy before I just called up my vendor and said, no, you're terrible. I'm not buying anything from you if you don't have a backup. In fact, I wouldn't do that anyways. I would just find the one that works. And if the other one calls, be like, hey, sorry, but I found someone who does a little better than you. And I would give them the opportunity or give them the respect of telling them what they're not doing. I'll just throw this in here. A lot of the stuff I talk about is because I've screwed all of this up. Okay. At some point in my life, I've screwed all of this stuff up. Uh, the primary sales rep that I use now, at one point, he thought I was a giant jerk. And I don't really understand what I did, but apparently I didn't treat him very well. And that sucks when you find that out. It was not a fun day for me when I found out, oh, he doesn't want to call you back because he thinks you're a jerk. And I thought, man, that's crazy. But like I said, I've screwed all this stuff up. So we got to have relationships. We got to treat them right. Your insurance agent, I already touched on that, but it it's so vital that you have a good support group, right? From the vendors, the insurance agents, the bankers, the all of these people that you have to rely on. So I love our insurance agents. That we have like a team of them that we work with on a regular basis. They do a really good job. We have probably, man, I bet you I get 4 or 5 phone calls a month easily of somebody wanting to know if they can quote our insurance. And it's always the same thing to me. I'm like, "Look, you're not gonna." I have no complaints. I have utmost trust in the people that I use right now, and I have no complaints. They do everything that they possibly could do to make sure that we're successful and make sure we can pay the bill. So, what can you provide me, right? I mean, what how much cheaper would you have to quote insurance for me to even roll the dice and think about walking away from them? Now, what's interesting about that is can do our customers say that same thing about us, right? Because that is an incredibly powerful I don't bond, maybe I could say. I don't want to make it sound weird, right? But that happens between us and our insurance agent, and it's going to be extremely difficult for anyone to get us away from them. So do we provide that same service to our customers to where they have that response, right? Man, you're going to have to save me 30, 40, 50% for me to even think about it. And I'm not saying I would move if you do save me that much. Like, that's what we should strive to accomplish, is to have that level. Anyway, sorry, that was a tangent. Um, I mentioned this earlier, but we'll send if we're bidding a job and the insurance requirements are something odd, like I'll send that over to the insurance agents. I'll say, hey, can y'all take a look at this, make sure that we're covered, or tell me how much money I need to add into the job to make sure that we are covered for this requirement. Uh, then when we get a contract, I will send it to them again and say, hey, we need to issue a certificate of insurance. Can y'all take a look at this? And hopefully we knew whatever was coming when we bid the job and we didn't just wait until we got the contract. But they're on it. And they send me back these emails and I kind of poke fun at them a little bit, but they send me these emails and it'll be like, man, they sit there and type 3,000 words and then they go through all of this stuff. And a lot of times I don't even understand what they're talking about, right? I'm not an insurance professional. And so I'd have to do my best to try to decipher that and get them on the phone and be like, all right, talk to me like I'm 5, right? Maybe then I can understand because I don't know if you think you're just talking to me like I'm an adult. Well, apparently I'm not, right? And so we have a lot of that. But again, find someone you can call. So I want to call my insurance agent and I want to say, well, actually, when I call them, they see the caller ID and they know it's me. But I want to call them. I want to say, hey, this is Dan with Memphis Fence. And they go, oh, hey, Dan, right? That's what I want to happen. I don't want to call and say, hey, I'm Dan with Memphis Fence. And they say, oh, what's your customer ID number? I don't care what your name is, right? Like, I do not want that interaction. Same thing with a banker. And a banker, I kind of think that our banker is at least somewhat responsible or somewhat contributed to the fact that I'm still sitting here today. And I don't exactly know how that connection was made, but that connection was made and it saved our butt a lot. Okay. It was not a relationship of what's your account number. It never was. And I was freaking broke like a broke back then. And he was able to come in and restructure some loans and some debt and refinance stuff and all of this and saved our butt. So, a good banker is fantastic. Give them financials regularly. Don't try to hide from them. Don't hide that stuff. If you have a bad quarter, a bad year, whatever it is, it's okay. Just let them know, right? Maybe if you think you're doing great, ask their opinion. Say, hey, you look at these all day. Can you tell me what you think about these financials? Tell me what we're missing, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. Do I need to add more expense accounts in my P&L so we can kind of separate some of this stuff? Like, have a conversation with them. Uh, Establish a line of credit with your banker. Cash flow in the general contractor world can be very challenging. Having a line of credit is fantastic. Much like a lot of the things that we've talked about so far, I would suggest having the line of credit established before you need it. It's not something that you're going to just pick up the phone and say, hey, I need a line of credit. And they go, okay, cha-ching, you're done. Right? It takes some steps, it takes some work to get it set up and to get it going. So go ahead, get it done. Don't wait until it's too late. It'll save your butt one of these days. So now I'm going to touch on kind of systems a little bit here. And systems, software, whatever word you want to put there. There's a lot of paperwork that goes along with these jobs. You have a lot of stuff to keep up with, right? So you're going to get a contract, you're going to have to issue a certificate of insurance, there's submittals, there's change orders, there's billing documents, there's all of this stuff. And I hope that you're doing some job costing and you're tracking that. So there's another thing to keep up with. And so you might want to kind of have a decently thought out system for all of those things to go through. If you're like me, you're not going to do that, right? You're going to get a contract and go, oh crap, where do I put this? What do I do with this thing? Right? To be honest, that's what I would do. But I know you can be better than me and you can be prepared more than I normally am. So just kind of think about some system or some software, something like that, because it's a lot to keep up with. And you don't want to wait until it is a complete holy nightmare catastrophe that you're trying to keep up with all of these different things and juggle them. And then you say, oh man, I need to build a system. Because that's normally when I build systems, and that is not the best way to do it. Okay. So just think about it. We all know that I like to talk about Henry Ford. And we all know Henry Ford, and we all know that he built an assembly line that changed the automotive industry, right? So his assembly line, why do you think it succeeded? I'll give you a minute. Well, it succeeded because he had a strong team of workers, vendors, and customers. And without any of those, the system fails, doesn't work. So we have to do the same thing. We have to have the system, the assembly line, and then we have to have the strong team, the strong vendors, and the strong customers. And we can do it. It's all been done before. You probably know somebody that's doing it. And maybe it's not even in the fence industry. That's okay. Maybe somebody's another subcontractor. I didn't even talk about that with the whole call somebody and ask them. There's other subcontractors, right? It doesn't specifically have to be someone in the fence industry. Maybe you know somebody that installs windows for general contractors. Call them and talk to them. See how their stuff goes. I don't know that there's 100% crossover, but it'll at least give you an idea. Sorry, had to take a drink. All right. This is a challenge. A lot of the stuff I talked about, I know what's going to happen. You're not going to do it until something's falling apart if you're like me. Because a lot of this stuff I wouldn't do. The contractor's license, I did that. The vendors, we had those set up. Let me look through here. Uh, it took me a long time to really get a good grasp on financial stuff because I never just stopped and learned it. And I had no idea what I was doing whenever I started. Drug testing, I kind of inherited that. The OSHA stuff, I think we maybe had one or two people that had been through an OSHA 10 when I bought Memphis Fence. And we have since, like I said, seen a lot of the OSHA 30 stuff. And now if we do it, we just do an OSHA 30 that's online. If you really want to take that a step further, you can go become certified to be an OSHA 30 instructor, but you have to spend the time going through the certification process, and then you have to spend 30 hours with everybody you want to learn it. We had all the insurance stuff. I was pretty well had a grasp on that. Like I said, the contractor license, I've definitely been in that situation a few times where somebody asked me about a contractor license and I didn't have it. That's not something that probably should be admitted publicly, but here we are. I don't, I just am who I am, right? I tell you, I've messed up all of this stuff. I never did any research. In fact, I used to think, what's anybody else in the world going to teach us? And I mean, this was back years ago. I didn't know nothing about nothing. And I was like, "Oh, man, I've been here my whole life, and all these folks been doing it forever. Man, we got this. We know everything. We don't need to listen to what those other people say." And then I realized I need to listen to what those other people say. And now I'm reading 100-year-old autobiography about Henry Ford. So it's educational stuff is important and different perspectives, right? You get different perspectives from different people and different ideas, and it just kind of gets the wheels turning. All right, so I'm on step 3. I think there's 8 steps, so I've confirmed this definitely will be multiple pieces. But let's try to get through step 3 because it's a big one. It's important. There's not an easy solution. I hate to tell you, but you got to the subject of step 3 is learn the trade beyond installation. It's big, it's important, specifically plans and specs. Okay, so learning to read blueprints and to understand what's going on, that's a whole thing in itself. There's no easy solution. There's no 10-minute YouTube video you can go watch. There's none of that stuff that's going to just give you a shortcut to knowing how to do it. You have to put in the work. You have to spend the time. You got to grind and you'll get there. There are classes. I know I took a blueprint reading or something like that class way back when, maybe in like 2008 or something. And I took it from a general contractor. It was hosted by a general contractors association. They still do it in Memphis. I would assume that you could probably find something like that in a major city near you. But I took that a long time ago. I don't know. Maybe it laid the foundation for what I can do now. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But there are classes out there. You can also just practice. It's kind of difficult to find a plan set that you can just download by going to Google, but it does exist. Put in a little bit of work. You can download a set of plans that you don't have to have any login for or any of that stuff. And if you've never seen one, right, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Is if you've never seen one, just go find one and download it and start poking around in there and look up the there's a method to the sheet numbers, right? So understand the method to the sheet numbers is going to start kind of honing where you go look for fins. But just start and play around. Take some time to get used to it. If you do it and if you work on it, you're going to get faster, you're going to get better, but you got to spend the time and you got to do the work. I would even say before you actually submit a bid to somebody, you might go through and do a practice bid. Right? Remember those people that you called earlier and you talked to them who are fence professionals and they know what they're doing? Maybe you can convince 1 or 2 or 3 of them to bid a job, and then you bid the same job, and you can compare scopes, you can compare material list, you can compare all that stuff and see what you included or what you missed. But just run through a few practice jobs before you ever submit one. I mean, it's normal for people to practice, right? And just kinda as you're going through it, if you do this, pay attention to how confident you are, right? Are you 27% confident that you included everything, or are you 95% confident you included everything? Now, do you wanna go submit a bid that is thousands of dollars and risk whatever you missed on a 27% confidence? I don't. I wanna be fairly confident. But anyway, run through some practice, ask people to look at it. Right? Maybe ask 2 or 3 people. Maybe you have to pay someone. Maybe you have to pay for some expert's time to sit down and go through and bid a job and to look at it. If you're looking at a plan set that's too complicated and you don't understand what's going on, go find another one that's easier. All right? Just keep downloading until you find one that actually makes sense and you can figure out. But if you do have to pay for some expert's time to review a plan set and to prepare a bid, because I mean, depending on the complexity, it might take a couple hours. Well, that's still cheaper than it would be if you went out and you bid 15 jobs wrong and you started selling them and then you figured out you were wrong. So, because that process takes some time, right? You don't really bid a job and then get a contract tomorrow or in 3 days, or maybe you get a contract a month down the road or 6 weeks down the road or something like that, right? It takes time. And so by the time you get that contract, go through the whole certificate of insurance submittals, da 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 da, da, and actually get to the point where you realize you made a mistake, you might be 8 months down the road. How many jobs have you bid by then? And if you missed $5,000 on every one of those, that's going to be expensive. So, like I said, you might have to hire somebody to review them, and it's going to be cheaper than the alternative. So, you understand fence. I assume if we're at this point, you probably understand fence fairly well. So, now you just have to learn a new skill. That's it. It's not the hardest thing in the world. I mean, we're not building rockets, we're not doing brain surgery. It's just another skill that you got to spend time to learn. How long did it take you to learn how to put up a fence? Right? It didn't happen overnight. You spent time, you practiced, you did all of that. So you got to understand that you can't walk the site. So you can't, sometimes, yeah, there's exceptions. Nothing is always, but a lot of times you can't walk the site and see what it's going to be like. Right? The whatever site is going to be there in 6 months or a year or something like that, it's not there today. And so you can't do what you've been doing and go walk around and look and see the grade and all that stuff. You got to look at a piece of paper and understand it. So Mr. Isaac Alexander says he's got plan sets if somebody wants some practice sets. And he says he's also an expert for hire in these things. If you want somebody to do a side by side comparison or just do it for you, then you can just stop listening if you want to hire somebody to do it for you. All right. Read the specs. You have to have an understanding of the job. Remember the story about we had to work overnight, we had to work around the clock, we had to do all this stuff, and the person that bid the job didn't understand any of it. It cost a lot of money because they didn't understand. And you can imagine having multiple crews on a job site working 24 hours around the clock, all of that stuff. It's expensive. So obviously we have to read the fence specs, but there's a lot more to it. Is there domestic material? Are there insurance requirements? Okay. Again, send them to your agent. Are there wage rates on the job? Some stuff has some pretty steep wage rates. You don't want to miss that. What's the warranty period? I mean, if you see a job that has a 12-year warranty on the fence, are you going to be okay with that? Well, if you bid the job and you get a contract and you never see this 12-year warranty, you might just have to be okay with it, whether you want to or not. What's the schedule? What are the liquidated damages? Sometimes, every once in a blue moon, I've bid a job and I've looked at the schedule and I've said, man, they want this to be done in 4 days and it's going to take 3 weeks. Well, I'll just put money in for liquidated damages. Why not? I mean, it's not the ideal thing. And I would be transparent with the contractor at some point about that, right? Maybe on my proposal is ideally when I would be transparent about it. But sometimes that's just the way it is. Sometimes the schedule that they have on there is completely impossible and there's absolutely no way to do it. And I would rather just put the money in there, be transparent with them, tell them, hey, we can't do what they are asking, but here's what we can do. And here's my line item for liquidated damages. You can always look for classes and training. There's a lot of that stuff that happens in the fence industry now. Um, Thornton Fence Consulting Group, that is one of the partners here on the show, would probably either help you out or maybe be able to point you in a direction of someone who could. And ultimately, I think practice, right? Just sit down, practice, practice, practice. All right, I got a couple more, and then I think we're going to end this episode. So when you make a proposal, include the scope of work, include a scope of work with your bid, right? So what are you bidding? What type of fence? How many feet of fence? How many gates? What are the specs that you're bidding? All of that stuff. And if you can be a little bit more detailed, then it'll help somebody look at your estimate and say, wait a minute, why does this one have 1,800 feet of fence on it and this one has 7,000? right? So it'll kind of show these red flags to the estimators that work for the general contractors. So I do like to have the scope on there. What you're bidding, where did you find it is a really good one. We have yet to implement that. Somebody who listens or did listen to this show brought me a proposal one time and said, "Here, I just wanted to show you our proposal." And it had all of that on there, right? It was like, "Hey, we did the takeoff on these sheets. We read the specs on this sheet or in the spec section or whatever it was." And they had little, kind of like a little table that they put all that stuff in, and I thought it was a brilliant idea, and I've yet to implement it. So, I like sometimes when I bid a job, I'll put, as I'm typing out my scope of work and every line item, I'll put like a description with it, and I might put as seen on sheet number da 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 da, right? Or based on specs found in spec section da 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 da. So, I'll do that kind of stuff, but the table thing is really solid. So, what are you not bidding on? What are your exclusions? We have a generic list of exclusions that we put on everything. We might delete some or cross some out here and there. If we do include something, we typically don't include, but we do have a list of exclusions that go on our proposal and we list everything out. So I'm going to beat another dead horse real quick and then I'm going to end. But when you make a proposal, make it short, make it sweet, make it concise, whatever you want to say. Don't make that joker 10 pages long. Nobody wants to read all that crap, right? If you do feel the need and you have the compulsion and overwhelming desire to make your proposal 10 pages long, at least do them a favor and put the scope and the price on the first page and then put all the other junk behind it because that's all they want, right? They want the scope and they want the price, they want the inclusions, the exclusions, and that's what they want to see. And if you need to put all the other stuff, put it behind it. And that way they can just throw the rest of it away and they'll have what they want. And with that, I'm going to end the show. We made it through 3 steps. Hopefully, next time we can make it through the rest. These are the next ones, maybe are a little bit shorter, but as always, I do appreciate all of you being here. Isaac, thanks for hanging around with me. And if you have any questions or anything, phone number is scrolling on the bottom of the screen, 901-878-4987. Feel free to reach out anytime or contact me at any of these sponsor companies and you'll get in touch with me. And I'll see you next time.